Welcome to Your Family Dog, a podcast dedicated to helping families love living with dogs.
Welcome back to the Your Family Dog podcast. I'm Tina Spring, and I'm joined today, as always, by my smart and pretty co-host, Julie Fudge Smith. And today, we thought we would take some time to talk about how we sometimes unintentionally build the behaviors in our dogs or our kids or our partners or our friends that we actually don't enjoy all that much, and how that can sometimes become almost like a superstitious form of training. So I'm doing the introduction, and Julie said she had a really good example for this. So I'm going to turn it over to her.
All right. Thanks, Tina. Okay. So this example comes from when I was the first year I was a trainer, a rookie trainer, and we had a client, and I found out the mistake I made because the client that I had given the suggestion to came to one of the seminars that was offered by All About Dogs, and his problem was chosen by the presenter as one to talk about, right? So what happened was he had a dog that constantly would jump onto the sofa, look out the window, and bark, right? So what I suggested he do was make it more interesting to be on the ground rather than on the sofa. So I suggested that when the dog jumps on the sofa, you lure him off, you get him off, and you reward him for being on the ground. I know you know where this is going. So what happened, what we actually did was we chained the behavior. Jump on the couch, look out the window, bark, turn, get off, get a treat. And so I realized as he was presenting is like, oh, I did that wrong. What I actually did was reinforce not the behavior of staying on the ground, but what we reinforced was the chain of behaviors. Is that what you were talking about, Tina?
It can absolutely be that. And I would say that I see that manifest sometimes as, did you learn what I thought I taught you? Right? So I might work with a client and say, okay, so here's the situation that's presenting. Here's how we might adjust things to make it different. And what I think I taught them and what they took out of that lesson are two different things. And so they get what I call behind the behavior instead of in front of it. And so then they're stuck. And yeah, they unintentionally build a behavior chain. I think this happens a lot from when we have puppies, right? We're all trying to house train the puppies. So the puppy fusses in the crate and we haul tail to get them outside. If you live somewhere or you're utilizing a leash for that, we're now teaching the puppy to pull on the leash and then to go outside and hopefully potty. So over time, as puppies start to figure the world out a little bit, they, in my experience, will start to use fussing as like, I want, not, hey, I need to eliminate. And so there's this developmental stage where if we're not on top of it as instructors or as handlers, the behavior started for one reason. It started in puppyhood. I'm fussing because I need to get out of the crate because I need to go potty, and changes into, I would like to not be bored in my crate and I would rather be pottying in the living room. So when our puppies go through that I'm bored stage where they start to use fussing as kind of just demanding more of whatever it is they think they want in that moment. I want to go say hi to that dog. I want to go say hi to Mildred across the street. I want my dinner more quickly. I want you to do training with me. I want. If we stay in that, like, okay, I got to hustle to get to you stage, we unintentionally build this momentum and frustration into the system. And then, when the dog is 5, we're really frustrated that anytime we put them in the crate, they fuss. They're very demanding. They're always pushing us around. Then people start bantering about their dog is dominant or stubborn. And I'm like, your dog just learned exactly what you accidentally taught him, which is a very humbling lesson for professional dog trainers to learn as well.
Yes. And the one thing I will say too is that while dogs are not particularly good at generalizing, on particular things, when they learn, oh, this fussing works to get me out of the crate, right? Then there's this epiphany at some point where they go, well, I wonder if fussing will work in this situation or in this situation. And they begin to generalize in exactly the way you don't want them to. And that can become a real problem. So what, with the example of, for example, like that I gave you that I messed up for this poor person, of the dog chaining the behavior of jump on the couch, look out the window, bark, look at my owner, jump off the couch and get a treat. Where would you start to break that behavior chain? And how would you train the dog then not to jump on the couch and look out the window? One of the things that I think that I learned, if I may interject into my own self, this is weird. Anyway, is that one of the things that I have learned that helps to control that kind of behavior is you have to eliminate or modify the stimuli. So that if whatever's going on outside is really stimulating to the dog, then close the curtains, close the blinds, put up some kind of, you can get these, I've got one on my front window right now. So it was intended to stop the birds from hitting the window. You can get these Klingon stained glass windows so that when they look out the window, they don't see the thing that stimulates them. So I would start with also managing the environment so that the behavior is not triggered as often, or that you can, or that's not as strong of a trigger. So that's one of the places where I would start. What do you think?
I think that management is training. It's just slow training, but it's very, very helpful, right? If I don't have donuts in the house, I can't eat them. So
yeah, that is a very sad state of affairs. I have found if I don't have potato chips, I don't eat them. If I don't have donuts, I don't eat them. And it's just,
if I have baby carrots, I might not eat them, but I might eat them. And if not, the deer will eat them. So adjusting the window, definitely one of the options. So is tethering the dog to something where they can't go and stare out the window. You could also, I don't know, reinforce the dog for laying on a bed on the other side of the room, but get in front of the behavior. And when you get behind it, meaning you got busy, you're washing dishes, you're helping a child with homework, maybe you're doing all three of those things at once, the dog takes that opportunity to get on the sofa and bark out the window. I might go get the dog, say thank you calmly, and then either give a timeout or send them to their settle mat or put them on a leash and keep them with me so that now they don't get to do that, or gate them off somewhere, or even utilize the crate and give them something to chew on. Because often those behaviors, at least in my experience, are that the dog is bored or frustrated. And so that just becomes a way for them to stimulate their brain and get a dopamine dump and, have something exciting happen. So if I can adjust and make good things happen a different way, say, if I know that it happens when we're working on homework, then I might do a stuffed frozen Kong, or I might do a food scatter feeding in a snuffle mat or with a snuffle ball. I'm going to give the dog something else to do during that time that floats them over the stimulus.
Right. It's kind of a preemptive strike. Yeah. What I have found is that if I know we're going to settle down and do this, it's like when I was training a service dog and he had to be able to learn to settle underneath a table outside at a restaurant or whatever. I would always take lots of stuffed Kongs. And so that when we would settle down to eat or to sit at the table, the first thing is he would sit, be a good boy, have him lay down, give him a Kong. Before we did anything, like order a meal or drinks or anything, we made sure the dog was settled into place. Yes. And I think that preemptive kind of thing. And I also love the idea of a settle mat, because you can make settle mats just really, really wonderful places to be.
Well, and to be clear, you don't have to carry a settle mat around. Like I've totally used a floor mat out of the car. I have used a napkin from Brewster's Ice Cream. Not that I'm regularly or have a frequent flyer plan at Roosters Ice Cream, there I have used one of my own socks.
Mm-hmm.
I have used a jacket. I have used a hair scrunchie. I have used all sorts of things. I have used a flip-flop to be like, okay, dog, lay on the flip-flop, or a notebook, or a piece of paper, right? A receipt, a very nice CVS receipt. A Doberman can lie on the entire length of it. They are not a sponsor. Maybe they should be. So,
CVS receipts, they're always amazingly long. I always
they're amazing.
Is that, during COVID, if we were going to run out of toilet paper, CVS receipt would be a fine substitute.
See, and other people just think of socks. So this also happens at other times, right? So you were using like a really good example of a dog who is, looking out the window, barking at everything. The example we were working on in class, because we had a big old exposure, was dogs who have big feelings, like out in public and on walks. So each of those dogs, when I queried the group, all of the people said, as soon as I, pick the leash up, my dog loses their marbles. And I was like, okay, well, let's start fixing that right here and now. So what we practiced was pick the leash up, toss cheese to your dog. Pick the leash up, toss cheese to the dog. Pick the leash up, toss cheese to the dog, until all of the dogs in the space were lying down, softly wagging their tails and smiling. They were interested, but they weren't out of their minds jumping up and down over picking up the leash. And so then we talked about next steps, right? You guys are doing great on this. Next would be I attach the leash and we don't go for a walk, right? Let the dog drag the leash around the house for 10 minutes and then take the leash off and go on about your day. Later on, do the same thing again, right? The same thing can happen with feeding time or with all sorts of different situations.
Like keys. Like I find that if I'm picking up my purse with my keys, the dogs are like, oh, we should be on high alert because something happening here. And so, you can do things like, yeah, I picked up my purse and I'm moving it from the hook to the table. Have a piece of cheese. Well,
or just like in that case, I might even move my purse from the hook to the table and then, like, I don't know, go switch laundry.
Right. I do a lot of moving stuff around and having it not mean anything.
So it's less predictable. Now, it does mean that you're going to lose your keys because we are of an age, people, where we forget. So this falls into all sorts of categories. Now, this also is a really great reminder that we can build sequences that we want, right? So this is a really awful and awesome double-sided coin. On one side is, how do we build superstitious behaviors in our dogs that make our life and their life less comfortable? The other side is, how do I harness the power of this knowledge to make things awesome, right? So Dovey, the Doberman, when he is let out of his crate, he goes to the back door and he sits. When he comes in from outside, he goes to his crate first, because sometimes he needs to go to his crate and chill out before he can enter polite society again, because we are a athletic, enthusiastic, young dog. So all of our dogs, for example, if I'm not working them for their meals, they eat in their crates. So when I start fixing, or Chris starts fixing dog food bowls, all 4 of the dogs go to their crates, right? This allows us to avoid a conflict, because we do have some resource guarders in the house that are kind of high arousal. We have a young, derpy, foolish dog who will, accidentally body slam someone through a window. One of the other dogs, not us. So it gets everybody out of the fray, right? I don't answer the door unless our dogs are either in the backyard or are crated, because no one needs to trip over 4 dogs at my front door. So those lessons also get learned, and my dogs have figured out the routines. So many times if somebody knocks on the front door, my dogs run to their crates. They might still be barking, but they're going to their crates. And Jack will ask to go outside because he would prefer to be outside rather than in his crate. So this is one of those things where we can think about how we accidentally hurry when our dog is loud. Like that, loosely, I would say that that's a thing, right? That for all of us, it's uncomfortable when our
Yes.
dog is loud. And for most humans, that makes us hurry up, when in some cases, we should slow down. It tends to
Yeah.
be loud. We probably should get quieter, right?
Right. And that's a hard thing
It
to
is.
remember. We have a whole episode on pre-macking. And this is the perfect opportunity to put pre-macking into action.
Yes.
Because you can reward your dog with behavior that he wants to do by asking him or having him do something that you want him to do.
Yes. Yeah. And I have to be clear, and this sometimes worries families with dogs that I'm working with. I will totally give a dog permission to bark at something as a reward for handling that something when I ask them to focus on me instead.
Yes.
Can you focus on me even though that thing's happening? And the dog is like, yes, you have chicken. I will do that. And I'm like, great. You probably need to bark at it right now. And they're like, I don't. I need more chicken. And I'm like, you should probably bark at that. And they're like, I don't need to bark at it. I'm chewing chicken. Right. But
Right.
no, but to the family that's working with that dog, it feels wrong. It feels wrong to give the dog permission to dig the hole, or give the dog permission to jump up for not jumping up, or giving the dog
for me, the classic
permission.
one was chasing the squirrel. Okay. You are not going to drag me down the street after the squirrel. You're going to stop, look at me, so I know that your head is somewhere within a 15-mile radius of your body, right? Once you've checked in with me and we've got, okay, then you and I will run to the squirrel. So you get to run to the squirrel, but you got to check with me. And there, as I've said a million times, there is no squirrel in the state of Ohio that is in danger of being caught with me running after it. Absolutely not. In fact, it's probably a great game that the squirrel's like, hey, let's see if we can get that old lady to run, man.
So until my heel spur heals, I'm not running after anything. Okay. So yeah. So I usually say to families, okay, think about a situation in life with kids, dogs, whatever, that is frustrating. And then sit down and think about what would make that better. And just like, oh, we throw everyone out of the house and they're not allowed to live here anymore. Not really a reasonable answer. So let's say your kids like to pester you while you're doing laundry. That is a lovely time to introduce children to sorting and folding. Right?
Yes.
So even little ones can go, is this a dark? Is this a medium? Is this a light? Right? Even little ones can fold towels. They don't have to fold it perfect. They just have to fold it. Right? Or they can work on matching socks. Or they can start going, whoa, these are daddy's boxers and this is little Timmy's boxers. Right? We can start teaching some of those skills. Well, one, you might have help with laundry, which is lovely, right? You might find that you have a laundry savant amongst you who loves doing laundry. Like I love doing laundry. Like I actually really like doing laundry. I'm a weirdo, I know. Not everybody does, but I don't mind it, right? Maybe because that was one thing I was not going to get in trouble for growing up. Like if I did laundry for 6 people, they were happy. So even if it was done imperfectly. And then also it might run off the pesterer to find something else to do.
Yes. What I was going to say is that one thing you have to remember is that sometimes like today I had 5 grandkids here, and 2 of them wanted to earn money because they want to buy some game. So is there something we can do, Grandma? Well, you can't run the vacuum because Grandpa's on a Zoom call, but you can dust. One of you can dust and one of you can use the Swiffer on the hardwood floors. So I was helping the one teaching him how to dust. And yes, it was really cute because I took Tina's advice. And when he came to take something off the shelf, I said, I think we should use two hands so that the frame feels more comfortable. So you're going to put the duster down and use your hands. And he did it right away, stuck it on the floor, dusted, put it right back up. And I had to invest some time with him to show him, you missed. That's an easy thing to miss. So let's think about those corners next time, because the dust will hide over there. We need to capture these dust bunnies. But taking the time to work one-on-one with a youngster or a dog, that initial input of time is going to pay off with a whole lot more time for you later on. So some days, if you're super in a hurry, that's not the day to teach. But you might want to think about incorporating a day fairly early in this process, if it's really that annoying to you, where you can spend some time and you're like, okay, I put aside 2 hours to do this. Usually laundry takes me an hour. We're going to have 2 hours because everybody's going to learn how to do it. And we're going to find out what you're good at is in laundry. And so I think that sometimes we have to remember front loading is going to pay off tremendously on the back end.
We're teaching with every repetition, even if we're not cognizant of it, right? So if every time, if one in, let's say 50-50, which would be brave. Let's say 50% of the time I remember to make Dovey use good manners, not make, but I kind of work on being mindful that like I'm in this moment, I'm teaching him, let's get him using good manners, coming out of the crate, going through the door, coming back through the door, whatever. But 50% of the time I'm on the phone, I'm grumpy, I'm hot, I'm in a hurry, my back hurts, I'm distracted, whatever. Well, he's getting away with being naughty or ill-mannered 50% of the time, and that's way more fun. So part of this, whether it's our kids or our dogs, is how do we make the drilling, that front loading, fun?
Mm-hmm.
And so, for example, as a foster parent with dusting, that's probably the only time my house has ever been dusted. I learned how to give bad news in a good way. So an example would be, wow, you did a really good job on this. When this corner piece looks just like this piece right here that's perfect, you'll be done. Right? So this is a positive way to go, hey, you missed a spot, which, by the way, we all would prefer a more positive way of giving us bad news. And also you can make it fun, right?
Yeah.
So we can make it that the little bits of dust are, talking about going on vacation into the air to land somewhere else, like the living room dust is now going to go relocate to the hallway, because I think that's how that actually works. We can also, in the case of little boys, we can talk about all the gross stuff that makes up dust. They love it.
Well, what I did
love it.
Yes. Well, with Robert, now his older sister Sophie was using the Swiffer to get the hardwood floors, but I knew she wasn't going to get underneath the bed. So I'm like, Robert, I got a fun thing for you to do. Because Clementine, I mean, she sheds a clumber a day, more like a clumber an hour. So there's always an accumulation of hair. So I'm like, okay, Robert, you get in there, get around the corner, and when you pull it out, you're going to be amazed, man. It is so cool. He's like, whoa, look at all that hair. I'm not a bad housekeeper. I just have a dog that sheds a lot. And so, but it was really fun for Robert to find these nooks and crannies, that he could stick the duster in, and what's going to come out on the end of the duster.
Right.
And he did a really good job under the bed.
Right. And I've literally this is probably gross. So I had foster children who like to really, really pick their nose. Right. And I did what all parents do. Like, we explained to them that it's not hygienic, all the things. And then finally our therapist is like, you're doing this wrong. You got to do it the opposite direction. I was like, what are you talking about? And she's like, well, when you see Gregory picking his nose, go, Greg, come over here. Meet me at the kitchen table. And we would wash our hands I'd be like, okay, come over here, wash your hands. Great. Now we're going to sit down. Here's a napkin. And what we're going to do is we're going to pick our nose and we're going to wipe all the boogers onto the paper towel. Because this is a wonderful, inexpensive hobby. And then I would marvel at the, nose mining that the child could pull off when he was done, right? So there was no angst. I wasn't like, well, you're in trouble now, kid. You've got to pick your nose. No, I was like, I see that you have a hobby of picking your nose. You seem to really enjoy it. So we're going to set aside nose picking time. It'll be awesome. There's no angst. And you let him pick his nose, right? When he's done, we wash our hands. Off we go. We're on to the next part of the day. If I see him picking his nose again, it's nose picking time. I'm so sorry. I forgot. Let's set you up. Let's wash our hands. Let's do this. Because if he's going to do it, let's at least get him washing his hands and putting it on a paper towel and throwing it in the trash. Right? So, okay, fine. Eventually, you get a child who goes, I don't want to. And you go, well, I'm confused. Like, it's a hobby. Like, whatever your hobbies are, I would really like to have you enjoy those. And so you will actually typically, if you're doing it joyfully in like 2 or 3 days time, you have kids who are like, I really don't want to pick my nose. And at which point I go, okay, well, if you've decided to give up this hobby, that's okay. It'll be interesting to see what the next hobby is. And if ever you decide to take up nose picking again, all you have to do is pick your nose and I'll know that you need nose picking time or scab picking or hair tugging or eyelash pulling or whatever it is. Sock hoarding. I had a child who hoarded dirty socks. So we would just marvel. I would be like, okay, let's see how many socks you hoarded. Where are they all? Right. And I just acted like, she was a little chicken and that I was collecting eggs. She was just a broody hen. Right. And so because there wasn't any angst about it, that behavior went away. Which is it's a really interesting thing that to a certain extent, we're all oppositional. If you say to a child, don't you touch that cupcake, right? Like a game we have all played with a kid. Don't do it. Don't touch that. Don't you touch that frosting, right? And it's kind of, we're playing a game with them, but it is a little bit of playing the game that they want to play anyway, right? Because they're like, I want the frosting in the cupcake. And we're like, don't do it, right? It's a little bit softer conflict. Well, our dogs do that too, where I'm like, don't bark at that. Don't bark at that, dear. And Jack's like, rah, rah, rah. Like he's got it. And I was like, what did we just talk about? Right. So there, to a certain extent, there is a little bit of, we can insert play into that redirect a lot. So if your dog pulls on a leash and carries on like a maniac and is highly aroused on a leash, and you wind your dog up 30 minutes ahead of time going, do you want to go walkies? I bet you want to go walkies. Do you want to go walkies? Right. And torturing the dog and then picking up the leash, the dog's leaping around, everyone's yelling and cheering. Then we're wrestling the dog to try to put the leash on and the dog bounces off the front door and then, makes it out. And well, guess what? Your walk's going to be a hot mess. So if you strip kind of all that energy out of all of the things, often you will find you did not actually need a lesson on polite leash walking. You just needed to not adrenalize your dog before you went on the walk. Because we all hear all the time, like he totally does it at home and then we get him to class and he doesn't want to do it. Well, he doesn't want to do it because it's a lot more exciting at class. So part of maturing and helping our dogs, our kids mature is giving them the opportunity, the peace, the space to kind of take in the environment and get their wits about them. And so if we're front loading all of that energy into the system, it makes it a harder job for the dog to do. And over time, it gets baked into the system. The dog starts to become very superstitious that if he doesn't bark at you for 10 minutes, you'll forget to feed him.
Right. Or forget to take them for a walk or whatever it is. Yeah. No, I get that. The other thing you can do too is that what I think is not only do you not sort of front load that energy, but you can also in some ways front load calmness. So what you can do is, sit down with the dog, pet him a little bit, maybe give him a treat, just get him into more of a Zen mode before you go on a walk, so that you've taken some time to sort of lower the energy level that the dog is at. So you start out calmer on your walk. So not only do you not sort of feed the energy in, you actually are taking energy out of the system. I was thinking when you're talking, I was thinking about, we went berry picking, the 5 grandkids and I, and Ellie went berry picking a couple weeks ago. And it was getting we went in the morning, but it was starting to get kind of hot. And at one point I look over and there's Sophia, my granddaughter, just laying in the grass. And I said, "Oh, Sophie, are you suffering for us?" This is a very Catholic thing. And I said, "So are you going to take on our suffering? So since I have this mosquito bite that itches, could you take the suffering of the itch for me? And you can lie there and you can take on all that will be your job, is to suffer for all of us, because you're doing it so very well." And she just looked at me and then she grinned and she said, "Yes, Grandma, I can do that for you." So all of our complaints were then given to Sophie, who became the official sufferer for the group. And so she could lay and do what she does well, which is suffer elegantly in the grass, while the rest of us pick berries. But it was the same kind of thing. It was using some humor. I could have said, "Sophie, get up. Stop feeling sorry for yourself." But instead, I tried to turn it into a positive for all of us. And then at one point, Sophie did get up and started helping her little brother pick berries.
Well, and likewise, right? I don't know, whenever I took children somewhere, somebody always pooped out first, right? So got bored, got hot, got uncomfortable, got grouchy, didn't get their way, whatever. I mean, I can remember at one point having a child fall out and lay in the grass like that. And I thought this was really brilliant. My ex-husband at the time just went and laid in the grass and looked at the clouds with that child and turned it into, that cloud kind of looks like Snoopy, right? So it took this like, "Oh, I'm not getting my way" thing. And it made it a really pretty 5 or 10 minutes. And then, he was like, "Okay, so this has been really fun. I'm glad we did this. Like, maybe we can go back to the berry picking or whatever it was. Like, you ready to do that? Right? Or do you just want to go to the car? Like, do we just want to go, or do we want to lay here and keep looking at the clouds?" So
I think it's important to remember that your kids, your dogs, your friends sometimes it's just incredibly important to meet them where they're at. You are not going to get what you want out of your dog if you can't meet them where they're at. And when you meet them where they're at, then you can move forward towards a goal that you both, that you want and that you teach him to want. Right. So I think it's really important to remember that, things don't always work the way they're supposed to. We're not,
and sometimes it's really predictable, right? So if we know that every time we get to the corner, the husky on the corner yells at my dogs and that makes my dog a crazy dog, well, then we might walk toward the corner. And the moment that I see my dog start to get concerned, like, I wonder if that husky's out, I might hold and wait. When the dog's arousal comes down, we might turn and go the other way. Right?
Right.
Because I'm going to say to my dog, like, "No, dude, I'm in this moment with you. I see that this is uncomfortable." I think as humans, we're very like, "This is how I do it. This is how we do it." Right? Like we're so fixated on, I have to go for the walk around the block because then I have to switch laundry and then I have to start the spaghetti pot water going, that we start to become kind of inflexible and out of the moment. We're more focused on, "No, I have to take the dog for a walk," instead of the quality of the walk or how enjoyable that is for me or my dog. If me and my dog are arguing, if my dog and I are arguing all the way around the block, that I'm like, "Stop pulling on me," and the dog's like, "Stop harshing my mellow, I just want to sniff." Well, what was the point of that walk?
Right.
It was all to be mad at each other? Like, that's not what I wanted. So it comes down to that piece as well. That piece matters too. So just again, I will say one of the things that breaks every dog trainer's heart is we show you how to work on polite leash walking, and you do great in the classroom while we're coaching you. And then it's the end of the lesson and we watch you get dragged to the car.
Yes. Yes.
And we have to sit down. We have to sit down and grieve, right? I get it. Everybody's in a hurry. We all have the next thing to do. But that just undid everything we just worked on. So let me talk about how to, like in that case, how to get around it, how to not break your dog trainer's heart. Have one piece of equipment, like a collar, a harness, whatever, a leash, that this is our school uniform. Like this is the outfit we're going to wear when we're minding, like we're doing it the right way. And switch equipment before you let the dog tow you to the car. So that over time, because I don't expect everyone to always have perfect hygiene on leash pulling. I know I don't. So if I have play clothes and school clothes, literally for the dog, this collar means we're working. This collar means it's your own playtime. You can do whatever you want within reason. It's less formal. Like this is a less formal moment. Then as a dog trainer, I don't mind. Because I'm like, okay, you made the decision that this is walking where the dog has more freedom to maybe be out of position or pull or whatever. That's a decision you made. But there's a huge difference, I think, between like it just happened because we're in a hurry because we got to go pick up the kids from baseball versus I put equipment on that says this is playtime and now there are fewer rules.
Right. Right. I think that that's a really good solution. And then I think also too that the dog will begin to understand more and more the walking well gets me more of what I want. Sometimes it takes a little while for this to sink in. If the playtime one is only a short one, like from class to the car or whatever, but when I get what I really want is when I'm wearing my school clothes and we're working a little bit, they're going to want to do that more. Because I think what happens is that the more something becomes rewarding and gives you what you want, basically pre-macking, the more you're going to see that particular behavior.
Right. And a lot of times I just ask questions. So I'm like, okay, how many dogs did you take on your walk at once? Well, I tried to walk all 4. How'd that go? Well, not great. It was kind of crazy. And I worried that if a dog ran up that I was going to have a problem. Like, how am I going to control that much dog if there was an emergency? If somebody if a pet sitter, because everybody's on vacation, opened the door and the neighbor's dog escaped and ran up to us on a walk, what's your emergency plan? Right? Well, I don't have one. It would probably be really messy because I have 4 dogs on leashes and none of them well-mannered. Right? So I'm like, what would happen if you walked one dog at a time? Oh, well, he'd be much better if there was one at a time. I'm like, what if we took some string cheese?
Yeah.
Like, did you take some chicken with you? No. Okay, well, what would happen? Like, how would he be if it was one dog with your undivided attention and a little bit of string cheese? How might that be different? Right? I think sometimes, though, people are like, well, I really, really want both dogs to get the exercise. I'm like, they don't really get that much exercise on a walk. They just don't. It's like, it's not that much. Like walking nicely on a leash, newsflash, dogs hate it.
Yeah.
They're like, this is the dumbest walk we've ever taken.
Right. Well, what I would tell people is when I was training and we were working on loose lead walking, and I had one class called Walking Granville. And for some of my more advanced students, and we would get together a small group, no more than 4 dogs, but every dog had a handler, right? So it wasn't like me walking 4 dogs, maybe 5. And we would start out in the least busy part and work our way through Granville. And oftentimes we'd stop and I'd say, okay, look, down the street, there's somebody coming this way, and there's another person coming perpendicular. Okay, let's watch what happens and see how they manage this particular situation. And we watched, and then we sort of had a postmortem. I said, okay, so if you're in that situation, what could you have done differently? If you're approaching perpendicularly and you see that dog coming down the street towards you and it seems to be reactive, what choices do you have? You don't have to go forward. You can stop, you can back up, you can turn around, you can turn. And if you're the person coming and you see the dog suddenly coming around the corner, you can do an oopsie and turn around and back and go back the other way, or move into a driveway, give yourself more distance. And you can give your dog both physical and mental distance. And mental distance is having the dog focus on you and get something wonderful to happen. And oftentimes I had a client who had a reactive dog, and it was big. It was a Newfie, huge dog. And one of the things we had to do as we were walking Granville is realize that sometimes there's not a whole lot of room for a Newfie. So what are you going to do? You're going to give as much distance as you can, move into that lawn, but turn the dog towards you and treat, 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 treat. And I tell people, I don't go for walks with my dogs without a bait bag on me. I just don't, because I don't know what situation I'm going to encounter that I might not need to use all those tricks literally in my bag to keep my dogs focused on me. And as a result of doing that with pretty much every single walk, I can walk my dogs past other dogs and I just talk to them. Yeah, I see the Bichon over there and he's really kind of busy, isn't he? He's talking away, but you guys are doing a good job of focusing on us. And so over time, it really does pay off. And I may not use any of the treats. I may use all the treats, but I sure as heck don't want to leave any of my tools on the table at home. I want my tools with me.
I agree. I think this is a great way to kind of introduce the idea of what behaviors are we unintentionally supporting, right? If the dog's all amped up, does that make us hurry? If it does, we might need to slow down. That might need to be the opposite, right? If barking at you gets you to go get a cookie or the ball and to play with the dog, you might want to think about how much fun that is. And do you want that front loaded into the experience? So
right. Well, I mean, like with Zuzu,
I think it's just a good thing to think about.
Absolutely. And the thing is that it doesn't necessarily happen right at the beginning. Like I can be out playing ball with Zuzu in the backyard. And I try to have her sit in between and to amp down. When she gets too amped up and she jumps on me, boom, game over. We're done. Until you can show me that you've calmed down enough. So
exactly. Anyway, like that's the thing. Like, so if the dog gives you the ball, but catches your finger in the mouth while they are putting it in there, that might be your sign that the dog's a little too amped up. And so I will sometimes say to people, well, how many throws did you get in before that happened? And I watch them go, well, I've never really thought about that, but it does happen at a certain distance into the game. So if I know that repetition number 7 is when my dog's eyes go from I'm enjoying fetch to crazy eyes, then I might stop at repetition 5. We might practice a little bit of polite leash walking or coming when called, or even just a food scatter in the grass. And then later on, we might do 5 more repetitions of fetch so that I'm not walking the dog to the breaking point all the time.
Right. And I think that's a really good piece of advice. It's just, you have to be in the moment. You have to pay attention. You can't change behaviors if you're not paying attention to what the behavior is. So that's part of it. Just, take a step back. I'm not asking, to be judgmental, just saying, let's figure this out. Let's just find out how many repetitions it is.
And it can be really fun.
Yeah.
Like you can learn things about yourself. I learn things about myself all the time from working with the dogs. I just do, and people.
Yeah.
Like my kids taught me way more than I ever taught them. So.
Oh, yeah.
I just want to be mindful of what am I teaching? What am I reinforcing? Because even negative attention is attention.
That's right. All right. Well, I think that's great, Tina. Thank you so much for coming up with that topic. I think this was an interesting discussion. And I would recommend, if you haven't listened to it yet, go back and find our episode on pre-macking, because it will dovetail quite nicely with this particular episode as well. So,
And all of it makes life better for you, your dog, your kids, everybody. Like,
everybody.
it's just better. It's just better.
It is. Life's just better with pre-mac.
Right. Like, I don't know. I might be on time.
All right. Thanks, Tina. We'll see you all next time on Your Family Dog.
Thanks for listening to Your Family Dog. Got questions? Interesting ideas? Visit www.yourfamilydogpodcast.com to share your thoughts.